Hi, this is Lee Clark. Stick around with me for the next half hour if you can. It's Sunday, February 4th. Apparently, it's Super Bowl Sunday. I don't plan watching. I don't know. The only reason I'd watch are to see the advertisements, but the ads are just getting so demonic. Is the word that comes to mind? It's just repulsive. So I was thinking about reading Jeremiah 50 and 51, those two chapters, about the destruction of Babylon. Because it says right at the beginning of the chapter to proclaim the fact that God's going to destroy it. And my belief and a lot of other people is that America is end time Babylon. It's also end time Egypt in a way. It's a lot of things. America figures prominently in biblical prophecies because there's a lot of God's people here. But that's a long study, and most people would probably go to sleep or change the station if I went into that. And I don't even fully understand it. But if you want to understand that America is end time Babylon, use the tools at your disposal. And right now, the practical teaching tool is the internet. So do a search for America Babylon, and you'll come up with loads of articles which explain that America is end time Babylon. And God is judging America, and the ultimate judgment is a fiery judgment. Babylon's going to burn, and apparently one theme that runs throughout those two chapters and in Revelation 18, which talks about end time Babylon, is it appears it's going to be a nuclear attack on the cities, because in Jeremiah 50 it shows how God is going to gather the other nations of the world to shoot arrows at Babylon. And I think that is symbolic of nuclear missile, because it says Babylon's going to burn. That Revelation 18. So read Revelation 18 along with that. And you can also read Isaiah 47 and 48 and Isaiah 24 and Isaiah 13, because Revelation 18 refers back to these chapters. The book of Revelation puts all the pieces together, all the Old Testament puzzle pieces, which form the end time big picture of what's going on. The real big picture is that Jesus Christ is returning to judge the planet and to institute the kingdom of God here. And so we have to prepare for his return. That one of the urgent preparations right now is to come out of her, my people, come out of Babylon. There are a lot of ways to do this. Babylon is it's the system that we live in, and God's people are absolutely under siege in America right now by the system, and it's encroaching further and further into our lives. And the ultimate I think the ultimate way it's going to come in is if you read Revelation 13, it talks about the mark of the beast. And everybody on the planet is going to be compelled to take the mark of the beast. So you're not going to be able to participate in the economic system without taking the mark. You won't be able to buy or sell. Well, that's going to be a real test, because, I'm still in the system that way. I could, if I was a voice crying out in the wilderness, out in the desert, then I'd be in a desert somewhere, literally, completely apart from the system, like the Israelites were when they came out of Egypt. God just totally took care of them right there in the howling wilderness. He provided their food, shelter. Their sandals didn't wear out. Their clothing didn't wear out. They had manna to eat. They had shelter from the sun because they had a cloud over them. And of course, it wasn't pretty. They apparently they didn't get along very well. God exterminated the entire generation that were adults when they came out of Egypt. They had to spend 40 years in the desert. They could have gone into the promised land within the first year, because it was just a short walk from Egypt over to Canaan, and God told them to take it, and they, didn't trust God enough to do that. So they had to wait 40 years, and it was the next generation that went in. Only two people, Caleb and Joshua, from the original generation that came out of Egypt, that got to see the promised land. Just two people out of over 1 million. Those are not very good odds. There are only 8 people that survived the deluge, the flood. Just the 8 people that got into the ark. Noah, his wife, his 3 sons and their wives, and a lot of animals on there. So if it seems like you're all alone and you're going against the grain, that's you're probably not in the wrong place, because Jesus said that narrow is the way that leads to life, and straight is the gate, and it means it's taking the hard road, and you have to squeeze in that gate. It's not the broad way that leads to life. The broad way leads to destruction. If you follow the crowd, you end up being destroyed. You have to come out of her, my people. You have to be different. Well, I've always been different. And I'll tell you another thing. There's a lot of ways I have come out or am coming out of Babylon. A lot of people would tell you that apparently I'm one of the worst sinners around. Hey, maybe that's true. I don't know, but I'm coming out finally. I don't know. I just made a decision. I sort of made a last attempt here in the last couple of years I've been in this area, to be part of a corporate church organization, and I just decided, no, I'm done with that. This is kind of my third and final attempt at that for one particular organization, because as far as I could tell, everybody there is in Babylon. They don't seem to see that. I don't see people there attempting to come out. But Babylon is all around us. It's the religious system, the economic system, educational system, governmental system. And one of the big things you have to do to come out is you have to observe the fourth commandment. You have to observe the Sabbath. That's the key. Other than believing and trusting in Jesus Christ, which many so-called Christians profess to do. But, Jesus taught that we must keep the commandments. Well, the fourth commandment is to observe the Sabbath day, Friday sunset to Saturday sunset. And that'll get you on the road to coming out of Babylon, because you're going to have to make changes in your life. It sets you apart from the rest of the world, which most professing Christians are in Babylon, because they're observing the venerable day of the sun, Sunday, the sun worship day. So that's why they call it Sunday. Sunday's not the Sabbath. It's Saturday. It's Friday evening to Saturday evening. So that's essential. But I'm coming out of even this, and actually I have been for a long time. But the Babylonian church organizations, even the ones that observe the Sabbath, because they're in Babylon too. And how is that? Well, they're gathered under a corporate banner, and they're most of them are 501c3 tax exempt organizations. And if you want to be classified as that, you have to agree to be muzzled. That's part of the deal. And so God's people are under siege. I would even say come out of the corporate church organization. A corporation is a creation of the state, and the state is part of the Babylonian system, and I prefer to be free from that. A lot of people did. I mean, I really came out of that over 20 years ago, but I go back. It's kind of like Moses, wanted to go back and see how the Israelites were doing. Well, I go back and see how my brethren are doing in the corporate church organizations, and it doesn't change. It just gets worse. So come out of her, my people. Read Revelation 18. Read Revelation 13. Read all of Revelation. But if you read the last 5 or 6 chapters of the Bible, you can read Revelation 17 and 18. It talks about what Babylon is, and it's symbolized by a woman who's a prostitute. And, the religious component of Babylon is the church that's headquartered in Rome, okay? And that organization is the one that Satan the devil works through to pretty much control the planet. And America has been, here's what I've learned. A lot has happened since World War II. I don't think you could really understand who Babylon is. You couldn't really understand Revelation 18 until after World War II. The last 70 years, so it's been an entire generation, because it's been 70 years since the end of World War II. Almost all of the World War II veterans are gone, because in order to get to serve, you would have had to been born roughly, 20 years before that. And most of those veterans are gone. We're even losing most of the Korean veterans. So now we have the Vietnam War veterans are the ones that are, baby boomers that are still alive. But anyway, Revelation 17 focuses, I think, on the religious aspect of Babylon, and I meant to say Revelation 17. I hope I said that. Revelation 17 focuses on the religious aspect, and Revelation 18 focuses on the economic aspect of Babylon the Great at the end time. Hey, have you heard President Trump talking about make America great again? Great. Babylon the Great. So, since World War II, America has been the economic powerhouse and the strongest military power on the planet. And it's pretty clear, especially since the 80s, and this is with good old President Reagan, who everybody loves, good old Ronnie, but we became sort of the military arm, I mean, in earnest, of Babylon, of Rome. So anyway, you find out who Babylon is. If you're an American, you realize you're living in Babylon. And then Revelation 19, as that begins, Babylon has been destroyed and burned. So it appears to be a nuclear first strike, a successful nuclear first strike, against at least the major cities and maybe all the cities, any major city in America, not just, the very biggest cities. And then you have a picture of the bride of Christ who has made herself ready and purified herself to be at the wedding supper. That's what Christians, that's where we're headed. And that's where we want to be. We want to be at the marriage supper of the Lamb. So bride's made herself ready, and then Jesus Christ, the husband, comes on a white horse with a huge angelic army. Some people think those are Christians in white robes that follow him on horses, white horses. I don't agree with that. I think it's pretty clear it's an angelic army comes to get the bride, to rescue the bride and to judge her enemies. And the whole world is, lined up against Jesus Christ's bride. So he's going to be, pretty upset about that. He's going to rescue his bride and take her. Yeah, okay, this is blasphemy in the corporate churches that I have been part of, but take her to the wedding supper, to the wedding, the marriage supper of the Lamb. Where? Well, in the first resurrection, what happens? God's people rise in the air to meet Christ at his return. So where do they go from there? Why are we going up in the air? Because we're going to the wedding. Where's the wedding? The wedding's at the Father's house. Where's the Father's house? I mean, most Christians understand that, where the Father's house is. And look at Revelation 7 and 14. Where are the 144,000 Israelites in white robes? They're standing before God's throne. Where's God's throne? In heaven. In Revelation, I don't know if I have it right after the 7 letters, so I guess it's Revelation 4. Where's John? A door is opened where? In heaven. And a voice says, come up here. I'm going to show you what's going on. The earth is going to be judged. And I don't think this is a place where we want to remain during that time. So anyway, Revelation 19, Jesus comes on a white horse, presumably to get his bride. And then Revelation 20 talks about the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he who has part in the first resurrection. Over such the second death has no power. So God's people are changed at that time and become eternal like God is, like God. And that is the goal, is to be in that first resurrection. Because at that moment, victory is assured. We have won. We have won against the devil and his demons and his system down here, his Babylonian system. And so Revelation says that also God's people will reign on the earth for 1,000 years. That's coming up soon. We've had 6,000 years of human history. It's coming to an end. It's taken us 6,000 years to totally, mess up the planet and to bring it, humankind to the brink of extermination. And God steps in at the last minute to save his people. So there's going to be peace on the earth for 1,000 years. It's going to be a Sabbath rest. That's why we observe the Sabbath every week, because it's a rehearsal for the millennium. The Sabbath day is the 7th day of the week. The millennium is the 7th millennium of God's 7,000 year, 7 millennium plan for mankind. So after the 1,000 years, the Sabbath rest, then there's a final judgment, and the fate of everyone who ever lived will be determined, and that judgment's going to be executed. So you're either made eternal and you're with God, or you're cast into the lake of fire. Everybody who takes the mark of the beast is cast into the lake of fire, and that's the end. But for God's people, there is no end. And after that judgment, then now that God has put everything in order and only the righteous are living, both human beings and even in the spirit realm, only the righteous angels are going to be around after that, because the angels are going to be judged too. And then you have Revelation 21 and 22, which are the new heavens and the new earth. And then that's the beginning of for us, the eternal kingdom. And it talks about that. So those last 6 chapters of Revelation, give you a roadmap to what God's plan is from now into eternity. But, if you want to be there, you have to come out of Babylon. Now, America is absolutely under siege right now from the Babylonian system. At this point, it looks like what we think of as the U.S. government is in bankruptcy and sort of a receivership. And, the president declared a national state of emergency back on December 21st, which I mentioned on this show. And it looks like he's going to be going after his enemies, which are all these people who want to take him down. And we're talking, there's never been anything like this in all the history of our country. But, people in the government and in the various government agencies and even in Congress are calling for not only his removal, but they're out and out threatening him. And there's not a president, at least in this current era, that they would tolerate that for 1 second. Now, I don't know what happened at the time of the Civil War, but as far as that's concerned, but my thinking is that the president is going to use this national state of emergency to arrest his enemies and bring them to justice. That's sort of the general thinking out there. But I think there's, even though, people who support the president would like to see this, there could be consequences, unforeseen consequences, which are, if we have to suspend, personal freedom and liberty in order to make this happen, what's going to happen to the rest of the people in America? That makes us vulnerable as well. So we'll see how it plays out. I mean, personally, I like the president, always have, regardless of all the mud they throw at him. I mean, we haven't had a perfect president ever, but the typical American is under siege. And I've been trying to come out of this system, for decades, and I've avoided some of the pitfalls that are there. One of them is that, we are sort of brainwashed into thinking, and I would think it's mostly by the mainstream media and the educational system and the just society in general, that there's certain things we have to have, material things. And you really don't need a lot to survive. And we also seem to think that we need the medical profession to take care of us. And these are even, Christians and even people in the corporate churches that I've been associated with. They rely on the medical profession. And, we have a healer already. God is our healer. God has given us everything we need to be healthy. And we can rely on Him to heal us when we have a health issue. Okay, if you break bones or you're in a car accident or something like that, yeah, it's nice to be able to go to the emergency room. But, God has pretty much, protected me from a situation like that. So, but the people, especially families, feel they have to have health insurance, and it's becoming very, very burdensome. I know Obamacare was supposed to be, this national health care system that provided everything for you, but that is turning out to be more expensive than the system that we had before Obamacare. So that is just one of the major traps, as far as I can see. Coming out of Babylon means coming out of the Babylonian medical system too, and putting your faith in God to take care of you physically. Okay, I just took a little break to do some technical stuff, but I was thinking, it's time to say this, that, probably the main reason why I'm coming out of the corporate churches is because they are infected, and they've been infiltrated by Babylonian agents. And I think that the ministries, and this is true for all Christian churches, but it's also true for even the churches of God which observe the Sabbath. These major corporate entities are packed and stacked with men who belong to fraternal organizations which are anti-Christ. And, I'm not going to be part of that. I'm not going to submit myself to that. I'm not going to subject myself to that. They actually, over the last 20 years, I was the subject of a smear campaign by these very people. And it took me a long, long time to wake up to it because, you think, well, no, this can't be true. This is God's church. This can't happen here. Yeah, but it does. So nothing's changed. They're still up to their same old tricks. That's how they operate. If there's somebody out there, a voice crying out in the wilderness, so to speak, that's actually telling the truth, they're going to target you and they are going to attempt to set you up for a fall. That's just the way it works. And so that's another reason I'm coming out because, I've had enough. I really, became an independent minister back in 93. So that's 25 years ago now, 25 years. Another way, this is a major thing that I did to come out of Babylon is, looks like I can keep going for about 3 minutes here. So I'll take that time to just summarize. This is something that's been on my mind for, 10, 20 years, but it's coming out of Babylon. How do you do that? I've been just coming out by instinct, coming out of the medical system, coming out of the corporate system. What about food and what you eat? Coming out of the processed fast food loop. It's not easy. I guess one thing that I need to mention, and I've mentioned this before, but we're under siege electronically and of course spiritually. And getting with Jesus Christ and keeping his commandments is the pathway to spiritual freedom. That's the way to get in a safe zone where you're shielded from the influence of Satan, the devil, and his demon. But so we're under siege spiritually, but we're also under siege electronically. And I got to admit, I spend an enormous amount of time on the internet, and a lot of it is, keeping an eye on what's going on and as far as current events. But the internet is can be a blessing and a curse. And I think that one way they're trying to condition us into accepting, the mark of the beast is through the internet, maybe through your phones, the smartphones that we have. And we're also under siege electronically from we're essentially living in an electromagnetic prison is how one writer puts it. But our minds are being and bodies are being heavily impacted electromagnetically. We're electromagnetic beings, and that natural flow is being interfered with. Okay, so I don't often have a cell phone pressed to my ear. I rarely use it to make calls.